Hello, welcome to Boardgame TV. I'm going to be starting a new series on Thursdays and Saturdays, and as you can see, it's going to be about the Ghost Rider. Now, for many of you who watch videos on my channel, especially the Marvel Legendary or the Hero Clicks, you know that Ghost Rider is my all-time favorite superhero. I first found, I think it was issue 50 in 1980. And I saw him on the cover. Now, I had been a fan of comics at that time, but I saw the cover and he was just so visually striking to me. So there was just something about him, something that just set him apart from the others. So I remember buying that issue and never looking back. So through the years, I would go back and get back issues and try to collect as many as I could from 1980 on. And so I wanted to do a series retrospective on Ghost Rider. He's had 4 main series through the years, and I've always wanted to talk about and critique the various runs, series, artists, writers, and just all around general love of Ghost Rider. And that's what I want to do with this series. I want to start this series with a good, very much in-depth look at Ghost Rider's history in the comics. Not so much the history behind the scenes, but the history in the comics. Of course, there will be a few behind the scenes, a little bit of history, trivia, knowledge to it. But I mostly wanted to go within the comics. And so for this first episode, we're going to talk about the first part, the beginning of Ghost Rider in Marvel Comics. Now, before we get started, there is a couple things I want to point out. First of all, if you're a comic book fan, you're either an art or a story guy. And let me explain on that. Let's say you love a comic book. The story is good, but the art is horrible. You'll tend to still stick with the comic book. And I am a story guy. I can tolerate terrible art for a good story. However, say you like a comic book and the art is fantastic, but the story is garbage. You'll tend to be an art guy over a story guy. I am a story guy. I prefer a great story. Now, I prefer both great story and great art. Don't get me wrong. However, if a series has bad art, I can tolerate that more than I can tolerate a bad story. Number 2. Ghost Rider first appeared in 1972. And you have to remember that was a totally different time than now. So, the Manson murders were still fresh in everybody's mind, and the whole satanic cult thing and cults in general were still a thing back then. Same with biker gangs due to the Hells Angels and movies like Easy Rider and hippies as well. Political correctness was non-existent. So when we talk about this comic, you have to remember that. Those were big things back in those days. The same was, traveling shows. Back in 1972, you only had 3 TV channels, and they usually went off the air at midnight. And people didn't sit in their house watching TV all day. We didn't have the internet or anything like that. So when a traveling fair or a circus or a stunt show or anything like that came to your town, everybody went. Everybody went to go see stuff like that. Those were real popular back then. Evel Knievel was a real popular guy. He's kind of what Ghost Rider is based off of. a motorcycle stuntman. You know, he was very popular. He was a big thing back then. Crash, rodeos, demolition derbies, all that stuff was popular. Nowadays, the fair can come to my town 12 times and I'll never know it. But back in those days, stuff like that, you know, would come to your town and it would be a big event and everybody would go. So you have to take that into account as well. Another thing you have to take into account, and this is going to be for the series in general, and this is for Marvel Comics in general, is the use of Satan, the devil, Lucifer, and Mephisto. Now, in the early 70s, Marvel Comics didn't have a problem using Satan. They didn't have a problem at all. Call him the devil, Satan, Lucifer, whatever. But before the end of the first series of Ghost Rider would end, Marvel Comics kind of scaled back on that, not wanting to take pressure and heat from parent groups and religious groups and stuff like that, which back then had a lot of pull. Kind of like, you know, something blows up on Twitter now. So they would later change basically the devil, Satan, to Mephisto, and he would be a little bit different. He would be more of like a cosmic type demon guy. I mean, he would end up fighting Silver Surfer and Thor and stuff like that. And, I mean, he still lived in a hellish world and collected souls and everything. But he was their way to tone down the devil. However, in the 2000s, Marvel would relax that and bring the devil back. So, for all intents and purposes, when we talk about through this series, Satan and Mephisto and Lucifer, the devil, they're all the same person, okay? Now, I know Marvel has said maybe they're different entities and stuff like that, but then they've never been consistent on their own continuity. Sometimes they say it's the same, and sometimes he acts totally different and is different. But for all intents and purposes, Satan, Lucifer, Devil, Mephisto are all going to be the same person, the same being for this comic book. And then there's two series that I will not be going over. Now, Ghost Rider's had four. Well, I won't say that. Ghost Rider's had 6 series in all, and several spin-off series and several mini-series. 2 of the series I will not be going over. The first one is Ghost Rider 2099. Now, in the early 90s, Marvel did a launch of 2099 comics, and I had the first issues of every one and several issues of all the others. The only one to really come out of the 2099 intact and still be popular and have a name for themselves is Spider-Man 2099. But because Ghost Rider in the 90s was so popular, they made him a 2099 character. There was the Punisher, there was Ravage, there was the Hulk, there was the X-Men 2099, and there was Ghost Rider 2099. Ghost Rider 2099 I will not be covering in this, is simply because he really has nothing to do with anything Ghost Rider. They just he's kind of like an android, a robot, possessed by some kind of virus, techno demon virus type thing, and he doesn't really fit. He doesn't have any of the same power, really same power set, and he's just totally different. When he was created, the 90 series was ongoing and was really popular, but the whole mystery surrounding who the Ghost Rider was at that time was all secret. So they could not use anything to give anything away from the current Ghost Rider series. So they just went in a totally different direction. And oh, there's my cat there. Totally different direction. And basically he really has nothing to do with anything. He's not really Ghost Rider. I don't know how else to say it. He's just not. He doesn't fit anything. He's just not. So I'm not going to be covering that series in this book. I mean, in that series of comic books in this video. The second series I'm not going to cover, and if I'm going to go ahead and warn you right now, if you're SJW or like identity politics or any of that stuff, well, you might as well go ahead and turn this video off or just give me a bunch of dislikes. I'm not covering the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider. Marvel Comics has gone to hell. Anybody who knows comic books, follows comic books, knows that they have been completely taken over by SJW and identity politics. You have the Marvel Cinematic Universe doing gangbusters. So you think the company would prioritize pushing titles, pushing the characters that are in the MCU so they can sell more books. Instead, they try to systematically fill their ranks with diversity heroes and get rid of all the, quote, white men. Let's get rid of Iron Man. Replace him with a teenage black girl named Riri Williams. Let's get rid of the Hulk. Kill him off. Make Amadeus Cho, an Asian guy, a more cooler, slicker Hulk. Well, let's turn Captain America evil and make the Falcon Captain America. You like Spider-Man? We're going to turn everything that you used to love about Spider-Man upside down. He's not going to have a secret identity. He's going to be a rich guy at the head of a Stark company, and he's going to be a doofus. We want Miles Morales to be our new Spider-Man. You like Hawkeye? Too bad. He's getting replaced by a female. You like Thor? Too bad. He's getting replaced by a female. You like people like Iceman? Well, too bad. He's gay. I know he's been straight for the whole time of his existence, but now all of a sudden he's gay. You want to see him fight mutants? Nah. Or even people like Apocalypse and stuff? Nope. You're going to see him troll dating websites, come out to his parents and worry about what to wear. And the list goes on and on. Wolverine? You like Wolverine? Too bad. He's getting replaced with a female clone, younger version of himself. And the comics, of course, don't sell. They're all big failures. And Marvel promotes the hell out of these characters. They push these characters. They show up in everybody's book. They put ads for them. They put these little videos out for them. And of course the books don't sell. So, I mean, other than issue 1, issue 1s of anything will always sell. Of course the book is canceled and they relaunch it. Book's around for a little bit, canceled, relaunch it. Oh, we gotta have a big crossover. Gotta make sure we put all these people in his books. So you have to buy the issues. And they still fail. If Marvel was not owned by Disney, they would be bankrupt. They literally would be bankrupt. If the comics division was not owned by Disney, they would be non-existent. They keep pushing these crap books, and they keep pushing all this diversity stuff when there's no need for it, because the universe, the Marvel universe, is already diverse in itself, and there was no need for it. Well, my Ghost Rider fell victim to it. Now, Ghost Rider never has had a stable, continuous comic series. He'll come out with a series, it'll get canceled. If we're lucky, it lasts a long time before it's canceled. And if we're unlucky, it doesn't last that long before it's canceled. And then you have to wait a few years and hopefully a new series will come up. So when a new Ghost Rider series is announced and brought in, honestly, I'm excited. And so many Ghost Rider fans are. But then we found out what they did to Ghost Rider. They said, no, we're not going to make your Ghost Rider. We're going to make a brand new diversity Ghost Rider named Robbie Reyes. He's going to be Mexican. And he's going to drive around in a flaming car. And see, his power set is totally different. See, he has nothing to do with any of the Ghost Rider lore or mythos or any of that. He's just possessed by the evil spirit of his evil uncle. Now I know he shouldn't be more powerful because that sounds really lame, but he's going to be the most powerful Ghost Rider of them all to ever have existed. And we're even going to have Johnny Blaze come into his comic book series for a guest appearance for a couple issues, pat him on the back and tell him he's the greatest. And that's what happened. Of course, the book lasted a year and it was canceled, even after Marvel heavily promoted the thing. I have nothing but disgust and utter disdain for that book. And I refuse to acknowledge its existence. And honestly, it stopped me from... That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I stopped buying Marvel comics after that. Now, since that series has started, I've only bought 9 issues of Marvel Comics, and that was the 4 Ghost Racers and 5 issues of Spirits of Vengeance. Only because Ghost Rider was in them, the real Ghost Rider. So, but other, you know, and that's been several years. So I don't think that's too bad of me to kind of give in and buy 9 books in what, 5-6 years. So I could go on a 2-hour rant about Robbie Ray's Ghost Rider. I really could. But bottom line was, it was a diversity comic. It was utter garbage. Didn't last but a year. And his power set had nothing to do with any of the Ghost Rider stuff, lore, mythology to come before. So we will not be covering that book. So, with all that out of the way, let us begin. Ghost Rider appeared in Marvel Spotlight number 5 in 1972. Marvel Spotlight at the time was a bi-monthly comic book that would showcase a hero for a few issues, and if the hero was successful enough, the hero would get his own book. Now obviously, the most popular comic book hero to ever come out of Marvel Spotlight was Ghost Rider. And he was popular enough to eventually get his own book. Created by Roy Thomas, Gary Friedrich, Stan Lee, who knows? There's even been a legal dispute as to who owned the rights to the Ghost Rider at one point in time. And depending on who you believe, is who you believe created it. But honestly, you know, we'll never know. I mean, so let's just say that when Ghost Rider first appeared, Gary Friedrich wrote him. Roy Thomas was the editor over the book, and Stan Lee had some creative input. He's obviously based off of an Evel Knievel type persona, a stunt cyclist, who was very popular at the time. But his look is what sets him apart. He is the most coolest looking superhero, in my opinion, that there is. And a guy with a flaming skull riding a motorcycle. You can't get more cooler than that. And so his look is what defines Ghost Rider. Even though the story can be the greatest thing and the characters can have the most depth at certain times, it's still always his look that defines him. And it's basically, let's make a cool looking superhero and we'll fill in the blanks to his personality, depth of character later. And the origin of Johnny Blaze is kind of a tragic one. Johnny Blaze's mother died when he was young, so he was mostly raised by his father, Barton Blaze. Barton Blaze was a stunt cyclist who worked for the Crash Simpson stunt cycle show. Barton Blaze, when Johnny Blaze was still young, died in a stunt crash accident. And so Johnny was adopted by Crash and Mona Simpson. They took him in as his own, made him part of the show. And of course their daughter Roxanne Simpson is Johnny's love interest, his love of his life. I think at first he saw her like a sister, but he's always loved her to a certain extent. And so Johnny became a really good cyclist practicing. And one day he was practicing a stunt on a bike. Something went horribly wrong. The bike crashed and exploded, and it ended up mortally wounding Mona Simpson. Mona, on her deathbed, begged Johnny not to perform in the stunt show. And he, for her dying wish, he granted that. Now, Crash Simpson's stunt show had been okay and popular, but it never reached the heights of the big time. And at those days, the New York Met was the big time. Crash was starting to resent Johnny because Johnny would not perform in the stunt show. Crash wanted to leave the stunt show to Johnny after he passed on. Roxanne was even starting to get a little resentful of Johnny for not performing in the stunt show, but Johnny, like an idiot, never told him why he wouldn't perform. They just thought he was a coward or something. But Roxanne discovered the truth one night when he found him practicing on bikes and knew that he was really good, and he told her why he didn't do it. And eventually Crash got a gig at the New York Met. He was just about to hit big time. However, it was around this time that he found out he had cancer and he only had a few months to live. And he told Johnny and Roxanne, and this of course devastated Johnny. So Johnny, being the good guy that he was, decided to make a deal with the devil. Now, again, this is the early 70s. Occultism is kind of a fad at that point in time. People were kind of looking into it. And you can see where Johnny would look into the occult. I mean, he's had kind of a morbid life with his parents dying young and all this death around him. But somehow, some way, he conjures up Satan and makes a deal with him. And he says, "You can have my soul if you spare Crash Simpson of the cancer." Satan agrees. So Crash, for his show, is going to attempt the world record of car jump on his motorcycle. He's a little worried, but Johnny's not worried at all. He knows that Crash is safe. Well, Crash does the stunt and dies in the stunt. He doesn't make the jump. Something goes horribly wrong. He dies. Johnny is, of course, devastated, and so is Roxanne, for that matter. And later that night, the devil comes for Johnny. So, of course, Johnny's like, "You cheated me." But the devil tells him, "No, I said I would only spare him from the cancer." And say nothing about the motorcycle crash. So the devil's going to take his soul when in comes Roxanne. And apparently Roxanne had been reading the same books Johnny had been reading, even though they set her up as a paragon of virtue, and banishes Satan and basically saves Johnny. So Johnny is now the owner of Crash Simpson's stunt show. Roxanne is his girlfriend, but however, he's not off the hook. The next night, when darkness falls, he's forced to turn into the Ghost Rider. His skin melts of his face and his face becomes a flaming skull. And he has no idea what to do about it. And that's where Marvel Spotlight 5 comes in. It gives us the origin of Johnny Blaze, how he got to that point, and sets him up. Now, early on in Gary Friedrich's run, Johnny Blaze is not really that powerful. He turns into Ghost Rider at night, and he becomes Johnny Blaze back again at dawn. He can shoot hellfire from his hands, but he rides a regular motorcycle. He's bulletproof, and it's kind of established that he can't die because the devil claims that only he can kill Johnny or he won't get his soul. So Johnny basically at this point in time cannot die. the devil will save him or whatever, because unless the devil has the devil kills him or one of his minions kill him, Johnny's soul will go to heaven. Your guess is as good as mine. However, now Johnny is fully aware and in control of himself when he's the Ghost Rider, and in all the fights and stuff he gets into, when he's Ghost Rider, he puts on this spooky act to make the bad guys seem that he's really a demon and stuff like that. And when he realizes that he can't keep it a secret anymore, that he is the Ghost Rider, he uses it as like almost a part of a promotion of his stunt show. Like, it's his alter ego, and it's all an act. And it kind of works out for him like that for a little while. Now, there's something I want to say about the first series of Ghost Rider. Is one thing it was never plagued of was bad art. A lot of series are plagued by terrible artists and they end up killing the series, but the Ghost Rider series never had a problem with the art. Many artists would come and go. We'd get a few stable periods where we had the same artist, but for the most part, all the art was decent to good. Some were obviously better than others, but the art was never a problem with the book. So, Ghost Rider went through Marvel Spotlight 5 through 11. And he did prove it popular enough to get his own series. And the first series of Ghost Rider would run from 1973 to 1983 from issues 1 to 81. We get no annuals, no graphic novels, nothing like that. Ghost Rider would not make a lot of guest appearances in other books, with the exception being a few times in Marvel Team Up with Spider-Man and a few scattered appearances here or there. But mostly he was just regulated to his own book. For the first 40 issues of the book, his comic was bi-monthly. And that means one issue came out every 2 months. So basically half the run he was a bi-monthly book. That's why he was around from 73 to 83 for that long a period of a time, because the first half of his run he only had 6 issues come out a year. He would become part of a short-lived supergroup of the Champions and would be a part of that spin-off series, but that series didn't last that long either, barely lasting 2 years worth of issues, but that book was also bi-monthly as well. If you can best sum up the first series, a couple things, really 3 points you can say is what plagued the series. One, lack of consistency. Writers were coming on and off the book for most of the book's history, with the exception of the Fleischer period. And every writer wanted to take the book in a somewhat different direction. And he would be around for a few issues, and then a new writer would come on and then do the same thing. So the book lacked a consistent narrative or creative team. Also, and that meant lack of direction. Lack of direction killed the book. They never really knew where they wanted to go with him. You know, you got this cool looking superhero, but he's kind of like a blank slate. And they just never knew what they wanted to do with him and what they wanted to do with his character. His powers are fluctuating. You know, Spider-Man came on the scene within the first couple issues. You knew all of his power set. Ghost Rider's powers are evolving basically through the whole series. And he's acting differently through the whole series. And then a third real big problem with the book was lack of good villains. Every good hero has good villains. Now obviously, he goes against the devil, Satan, a lot, especially early on in the series. So he is a big villain for the book. But the rest of the villains for Ghost Rider's history are really one-shot new villains who are not that good. A bunch of C and D list villains from other books that really aren't that good. And a few reoccurring decent villains. Now, there are two villains to note in the series that are, besides the devil, okay, that are really standout. One is the Orb. And that's, you can basically say the Orb is Ghost Rider first series main villain. He has the most appearances of any other villain, and he's there consistently through the run up until issue 81. But he's really outmatched by Ghost Rider. In the beginning, not so much, but towards the end, he's really outmatched. The other villain is a villain that came in at the end of the book and was only around for a few issues, but he's actually a big part of the lore and history of Ghost Rider and the end of the series, and a big part of the second series, and that is Centurious. He is basically Ghost Rider's equal, say like that. But we'll get more into him when the time comes. But other than that, like I said, really good lack of villains. And Ghost Rider would team up with some heroes, mainly Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and of course the aforementioned Champions book. But every now and then he would team up with some unknown hero like Arabian Knight or the original Ghost Rider, which they turned into Knight Rider. And I think those three things are what really hurt this book. Now, by the end of the run, when Roger Stern and J.D. DeMatteis take over the series, they start to build upon that, and the book starts to get some steam, but it ends up being a little too late for the book, and the book gets canceled. And we'll go over that when the time comes, but it does end with a happy ending. But for this part of the video, we want to focus on the first really setup of Ghost Rider. The first Gary Friedrich run. Gary Friedrich wrote the Ghost Rider from Marvel Spotlight 5 to Marvel Spotlight 11, and Marvel Spotlight 12 is included in this, even though it's a Damien Hellstorm book. It's Marvel Spotlight on Damien Hellstorm. It's a continuation of a Ghost Rider story arc. He would write Ghost Riders issue 1 through 4, and then Doug Monek and Mar Wolfman would write issue 5 before Ghost Rider would go in a new direction. Now, the first artist to do Ghost Rider is Mike Plog, and he drew Ghost Rider through issues 5 through 8, and of the Marvel Spotlight. Okay, and of course there was Jim Mooney and Tom Sutton who helped define the Ghost Rider. They were all the artists for all these issues, and they all did a pretty good job, and they're all kind of similar. So you see from the covers of what their art style looks like, although some of the covers can be a little misleading. And basically, these issues are basically Johnny fighting the devil, or the devil's servants, or biker gangs, and cultists. That's it. While trying to save Roxanne from whatever peril she's in. It's kind of like the 1950s Superman TV show, where Lois Lane would constantly get in some mischief and Superman would have to kind of go and rescue her. Well, there you go. That's what this is. So, in the first issue of Marvel Spotlight number 5, It's basically Johnny Blaze's origin story, and he's having to deal with some punks. Marvel Spotlight issue 6. He runs into a biker gang, meets up with the leader of the biker gang who calls himself Curly, but he's actually the resurrected version of Crash Simpson brought back to life by the devil, and to kill Johnny Blaze so the devil can have his soul. Now there's this thing going where the devil tries to get Johnny Blaze's soul several times, but the thing of it is he can't take it because of his love for Roxanne. Roxanne's love for him and the purity of her protects Johnny from the devil outright killing him. I know it sounds weird and wonky, but that's what it is. So she starts to become put in harm's way because she can be killed, and then when she's dead she can't protect him anymore, blah blah blah. If you look at this first story arc by Gary Friedrich, well, we'll get into that, but we'll go over what issue entails. So issue 7 of Marvel Spotlight is just basically the second part of the whole Curly thing, finding out it's Crash Simpson. They have a battle in hell. Crash turns against the devil and everything because he doesn't want to kill his daughter. Issue 8 is about the Witch Man. Johnny Blaze goes across country to jump over a canyon for a stunt thing, and the Indians there don't want him to do it, so one of them uses his Native American magic to try to fight the Ghost Rider. And if you're really politically correct, you're not going to like these issues, because the white folks call the Indians Injuns and degrade them, and the Indians can't stand the white folks and do the typical white man this type thing. Although the book tries to put the Indians in the victim spotlight about trying, just wanting to regain their land. So that's basically issues 8 and 9 of Marvel Spotlight are about Johnny Blaze trying to save Roxanne from they call him the Witch Man, the Indian guy. She gets bit by a poisonous snake. Issue 9 is basically trying to get her to the hospital. And then issue 11 introduces the witch woman, Linda something tree. She's the daughter of the witch guy who sicked the snake on Roxanne and tried to fight Johnny Blaze. She has also sold her soul to the devil, and in a flashback story apparently was in a college sorority, and it was actually run by a bunch of satanic women who wanted to sacrifice her to the devil. You know, this, who knows. But so she's sent to kill him, but and here we go with another masculinity type thing. Apparently Johnny Blaze is such a handsome guy and so masculine that any woman he meets obviously goes goo-goo eyes over him and just falls in love with him. So the witch woman falls in love with him because he's very handsome, and actually goes against Satan. Now, I am making it a little simplistic. He did actually, you know, he was going kind of through the same situation she was, so I can see how she could relate to him. He did save her and risk his life for her, and they're two attractive people, so I can see that happening in that case. Basically, she stays around for a couple issues and wants Johnny to break up with Roxanne, and of course, you know, he doesn't. And then Ghost Rider finally proved popular enough to get his own series with Ghost Rider issue 1, and it's just more of a continuation of the same. The witch woman is working for Satan, trying to track him and kill him for Satan, but it doesn't work out. And then it goes in a crossover with Damien Hailstorm, who's introduced as the son of Satan. And let me just say that Satan gets pretty goofy. If the real life Satan were to read how he's portrayed in his comic books, he would be pissed. Then of course Roxanne is kidnapped by some bikers in issue 3. She kind of forgets who she is. And then there's the whole issue 4 has the demolition derby. Ghost Rider stops an assassin from killing somebody else in the demolition derby. And issue 5 ends with Ghost Rider fighting the demon Roulette, who's another emissary of Satan trying to get Ghost Rider's soul. So as you can see, for these beginning of Ghost Rider, there's a theme here. Bikers, cultists, Satanists, saving Roxanne. The devil. And honestly, as a fan of Ghost Rider, and I have to be completely honest, it's an okay start. It's not a great start. It's not even really a good start. It's an okay start. It's not terrible, but it's okay. These issues can get rather boring, and you know, you have the look going for Ghost Rider, but I mean, the dealing with the same thing over and over and over again, with the devil trying yet failing to get Johnny Blaze's soul. Roxanne's in trouble. A new villain appears, but they're just really another pawn of Satan who sold their soul. It's really not that interesting and great of a start. And you know, it pains me to say that, but you know, I understand that this is a part of history, and the due respect, and I do give them due respect. But honestly, it's not that great of a start. It's an okay start. And this direction that Ghost Rider was going in was not going to be able to sustain itself. It wasn't going to last. It was like this. Marvel was just in that weird time. So in my next video, we're going to go over a shift. And the shift was to make Ghost Rider, you know what, let's make him a superhero. Let's make him team up with superheroes, fight supervillains, and kind of go easy on the Satan stuff. And so that would be the direction that Ghost Rider would take for the next Rider's run, starting with Tony Isabella. But that's for the next video. But for this video, you know, we're just going over his first real incarnation and a little bit of history on the book and how it got started. So I hope it gave you some information. I hope you gained some insight to the book, to Ghost Rider, to where he was at that point in time, and to the series in general. Like I said, this first run, I will give, you know, them credit for what they created and getting a foothold in, but it is obviously, it is not sustainable. You can only do so many comics like that. And see, the whole gig of it was, as you can see on the issue covers, is he alive or dead? The most supernatural superhero of them all. And he's going around fighting supernatural threats. And it's basically just the devil. So you can't keep a comic book going with that. And they wouldn't. And so hopefully you'll see how a tonal change, how a complete swing of the pendulum comes in the next video. But I hope you enjoyed this one, and I enjoyed making it, and I could talk about Ghost Rider all day long, but you know, I want to end it here and get ready for the next video. So like I said, on Thursdays and Saturdays for the next couple months, we will have a video like this. Some will be a little long like this one, some will be shorter, as I'm going to try to go and break up each person's run or an era of that Ghost Rider run and dissect it and see what we can do about it and give my thoughts on it. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Until then, have fun.